If you are joining us for the first time, hello and welcome. If you are a returning supporter and friend, welcome back. Today we'll be taking a look back at the history of credit cards. A staple of the consumer economy and ubiquitous in everyday life, credit cards are all around us. Today we'll be looking at the use and misuse of them throughout the world, the significance of their contribution to the world economy, how their use differs throughout the world, the burdensomeness of credit card debt and how best to avoid it, and their moral culpability. Quick disclaimer, none of the information contained here takes into consideration your own financial circumstances and thus cannot be financial advice. Let's get straight into the history. Credit as an idea predates even modern civilized society, but credit cards, as we think of them, came into existence in 1946 by banker Mr. John Biggin of Flatbush National Bank in Brooklyn, New York. The Charge It card could be used anywhere in the city, across locations. This Charge It card was a progression from the earlier but slightly different charge coins or charge plates. Charge coins or charge plates were similar in principle but were limited to merchants or industries. These very early credit instruments were very niche and very few. They were restricted to the very rich and very credit-worthy customers. The popularity of credit cards did move steadily until the explosion in popularity in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Now let's look at how they are used today. On the off chance you are not familiar with how credit cards work, credit cards are a way of paying for consumer goods or consumer transactions at the point of sale. The issuer of the card trusts the holder of the card with a given amount of credit, known as the credit limit, and the holder promises in principle to repay the debt once the credit card statement, typically monthly, comes due. If the payment is not made, typically in full, interest is charged to the holder of the card on the remaining balance at a rate relevant to that card. The interest and the fees are profit the bank earns from the credit card. There is currently approximately 2.8 billion, that's billion with a B, physical credit cards worldwide, with an average limit of just over $22,000. These cards collectively are used for 1 billion transactions per day, accounting for just on 55% of the gross domestic product worldwide. Of these 2.8 billion cards, the two largest providers hold the lion's share of the market, with Visa issuing 41% and MasterCard 34%. The interest rate on your credit card is a function of the risk the bank associates with that card. This typically has nothing to do with the holder as an individual, but the characteristics of the pool of customers that hold that particular credit card. These factors can include the likelihood of debt repayment, the nature of transactions made with the credit card, non-credit terms of the card, including repayment timeframe, and associated rewards of the credit card, which we'll mention a bit later. Common criticisms of credit card providers charging too much interest ignore the fact that typically purchases made on credit cards can't be refunded or recouped through other means, and on even fewer occasions are credit card transactions profitable investments. This increases the risk for the credit card provider, who then pass on that risk to the consumer through higher interest rates. The rates of interest can also vary significantly depending on the location throughout the world. The following is a very small summary of typical interest rates paid by different regions throughout the world. The US typically pays between 7 and 24%, Australia roughly 18%, the UK and Europe just over 20%, and Hong Kong 33%. These figures are very much just averages and by no means tell the full picture. Now let's talk limits. The limit on your card is an upper value to which the bank is willing to trust you in the short term to manage your own spending or your own personal exposure. This figure is more of a personal specification than your interest rate and is typically a function of your income and thus your ability to repay the balance. Although in practice, getting an increase in limit from your bank is not difficult and is typically not an indication that you're worthy of such an increase. The average credit card limit in the United States is $22,515. In the UK, it's £3,500. and in Australia it's $9,500. This is a major area where modern banks are seen to be morally hazardous, especially when we consider the fact that banks profit from situations where customers cannot repay the debt they have been approved for. Criticisms of banks in this area are far more justified, yet far less common. Now let's talk about credit card debt. Mathematically, credit card debt is simply the delinquent debt times 1 plus the average weighted interest rate payable. But this number doesn't tell the full human story. It can be a crippling burden for several reasons. Number one, typically the nature of expenses are those that are not refundable or income generating. Credit card transactions are more likely to be household items and not investments. Number two, many people hold credit cards as a safety net and thus only use them for large and unexpected expenses. Number three, interest is significant and levied upon those people who by definition cannot afford that interest. In terms of the real world, in the US today, 180 million account holders are overdue. The average balance of these overdue accounts is $5,315, which equates to just over $956 billion. This represents great profit potential for the banks and potentially significant heartache for many individual cardholders. Now to the rewards. Most providers have a rewards program of some sort. In general, the more you spend, the more rewards, typically points you earn to exchange into other products or services. You feel like you are getting them for free and are being rewarded for your spending. But on average, you have paid, in terms of the rewards, by between 150 and 600 times over. As a general rule, don't ever decide on a credit card or purchase anything based solely on credit card rewards programs. The rewards programs are not your friend. Worldwide, credit card providers pay out rewards to the tune of $17 billion in 2019. This was a mere fraction of total money spent by consumers, as mentioned earlier, and was still only 70% of total rewards customers earned. In conclusion, you would have heard many of the modern cliches. Credit cards, the downfall of modern society. That money or credit is the root of all evil. I don't agree, of course. Credit cards are inanimate objects. Like many other items, guns, drugs, alcohol, they cannot by themselves execute moral actions. People engage in moral actions. Using the card beyond your means is a choice, which has moral consequences. The bank issuing a credit card limit increase to someone they suspect couldn't service the new limit, that is a choice that ought to have moral consequences. Individuals and banks are both subject to moral praise and moral blame. Credit cards are misunderstood by too many and misused by many more. Our have it now modern attitude toward consumer goods has fueled our economy, but has come at some cost. A cost many either don't fully understand or didn't and don't want to accept. It is at times too easy to blame financial institutions and too difficult to blame oneself for one's own actions. This has been Unboxing Economics. Please like and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, history is more than just a bunch of stuff that happened. Thank you for watching.